Welcome back, everyone, to Fragomen FC Passport to North America 2026, the Global Soccer and Immigration Podcast. Today we head south to the roar of Vuvuzelas and the continent of full spirit to 2026. We're heading to Africa. South Africa is back at the World Cup, and the CAF qualifiers are delivering some classic drama as recently as a few days ago. We're joined by Fragomen partner and Sub-Saharan Africa lead, Lunga Mani, who oversees our firm's Sub-Saharan Africa practice, including Johannesburg and Nairobi. This is Fragomen FC. Lunga, thank you very much for joining us. We're really happy to have you.
Thank you for having me, Rick and Jake. I'm happy that I finally cracked the team sheet for Fragomen FC. There will definitely be lots of vuvuzelas and dancing in Canada, Mexico, and the US, and there'll be lots of fun for those that will be watching our games and in the stadiums. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, quick table setter for our listeners out there. CAF's Road to 2026 features 9 groups across the continent, and we're going to talk about how the format is shaping the field, South Africa's return to the big stage, and the practical side of moving players, staff, and operations around Africa. Then we're going to close with quick hits and predictions. So let's go ahead and get started. Lunga, again, thank you so much for being here. For those who've not met you yet, what does leading the Sub-Saharan Africa at Fragomen look like day to day, and which countries are keeping you busiest right now? Give us your footballing origin story, your favorite Bafana memory, and a club you follow closely in the region. What has changed most about mobility into and within Africa over the last years, and what's your vantage point in Johannesburg and Nairobi?
Okay, that's a lot. I'm going to give you some of those. I hope that I'll get all of them right at one go. Let's start off with what day to day means in my life. I manage a big continent. The continent has got, in the Sub-Saharan Africa, we've got, I think, 48 countries, and we provide immigration services to 46 of those 48 countries. So that means then that I need to have a team that is able to speak the language, understand the culture, but also understand the immigration systems of those particular countries. So it's a team of experts that I have to work with. I would not say I'm an expert in most of these countries myself, but they are. It's a team that speaks French, Portuguese, English, as well as local dialects. On a daily basis, I need to get to know where my clients are, number one. I just need to make sure that they are happy with the service that we provide, that I partner with them closely, knowing what's going on in the immigration space that is going to have an impact in their lives. In fact, not just immigration space, I'm just saying the business space that is going to, things that are going to have an impact on our clients' business, not just immigration. I need to work with my team, make sure that they're engaged at all times. They still love what they do. I must say that ever since I joined Fragomen and I started doing immigration, I don't think I've ever come home and said, I've been bored today. Sure, in fact, every time I come home, I'm like, flip, what else? There's more. So that is the good thing about the job that I do at this point. My childhood memory of football, I'll probably take it back to the World Cup of 1990. I come from a family, by the way, that's always been very much interested in football. I've got 3 brothers and a sister. The brothers are the ones who brought. I'm the youngest, by the way. Brothers are the ones who brought me into this. 1990 is the first time that I actually ever watched a World Cup final. It was West Germany at the time playing against Argentina, and Argentina were the defending champions. I think there was a gentleman. I'm not sure if I'll get his name right. Fuller. He scored the winning goal for West Germany. And I remember watching the trophy being handed over to the captain of Germany, and Maradona, as stocky as he was at that time, crying as the trophy was taken away from Argentina and given to West Germany. My brothers, by the way, they've always supported 3 teams at that time. It was Orlando Paris, it is still there now. one of the biggest teams around. And the second team was Morocco Solos. It disappeared at one point, but it's been trying to come back in. And also a team that also vanished later on. It's called Mtata Bucks. Mtata Bushbucks. Mtata Bucks. So I started there to follow football and to choose a team, and I actually ended up with Orlando Pirates myself. The memory about Bafana Bafana, that's a South African team, by the way, would be the time when Philemon Masinga scored our qualifying goal against a team, I think it was called Zaire at that time. It became the Democratic Republic of Congo. This was for us to qualify to the France 1998 World Cup. I think at that point, we had a coach, his name was Steve Barker, short guy, very passionate about football. Phil Masinga hit this goal from a distance outside of the penalty area and onto the left corner. And the whole stadium just like went on an uproar. And I still remember Steve Barker running around with arms stretched like an aeroplane, running around the field because he was that happy. That's my memory around that. I'm not sure if Jake have picked up, I've covered everything that you asked.
No, you did a great job. I know I threw a lot at you there to begin with, and one thing that I will say is, I think we can all say from our respective countries that in our jobs, there's never a dull moment. I think we all feel the same way when we go home at the end of the day. It seems like it doesn't stop, but we wouldn't change it for the world.
It's funny you mentioned the 1990 World Cup. That was Roger Mila, his coming out party in Cameroon.
From Cameroon, the
Yes,
dancer.
Cameroon. Yes. I remember, yes, the dance of the corner flag. I remember that World Cup myself. I was 10 years old. That was the first World Cup I was fully engaged in. Obviously being of Italian descent and Italy being the host, that was that was an emotional tournament. Some people still say it was one of the best ones ever held. I think some other countries have a claim to some that occurred more recently, but let's dive in for a moment into the actual CAF format. So, with the advent of a 48 team tournament, the CAF has amended their qualifying. So 9 groups, 9 group winners qualify directly, and then the 4 best runners up went into a playoff for an inter confederation berth. We now know that team is DRC. But Lunga, how has that sort of changed? How has this expanded sort of pathway changed the stakes for the federation itself and some of the players on the continent?
Sure. I would start off by saying I think it has opened a door, by the way, for other teams. Now, instead of you having to be on top to qualify for the World Cup, now you can still do a lot around that. The thing is, though, it's a long way around. I think we have to agree that coming second, and you have to be 4 of the best seconds. Now, you've 4 of the 9 seconds. You need to look at the point system. So we would bring out quality at this point. We're saying it's a quality of those seconds. Then you have to pick up the top second of those 4. So, and going to playing now in the interconfederations, that changes things as well. You're not only tested against your locals, your peers here. You get given access to other confederations, and they're saying, well, prove yourself against them. You've got 6 teams there now that you're going to play against, and the 2 are going to qualify. So what that shows then is that now we're focusing more on the quality that we send to the global stage. So if you're sending teams to the global stage that are tried and tested locally in Africa, number one, and also against other confederations, it means then that you've got a greater chance of having those teams proving their worth and moving out of the group stage. I think that's what CAF would like to see. They would like to see most of the African teams, or some of the African teams at least, making it to the playoffs after their group stages. So that, I think, is probably heading that way.
I think you're right, and I think the other thing is too, with the the expansion of the tournament, what we're going to see with 9 teams and possibly 10, if DRC should get through that intercontinental playoff, is a lot of these teams that may make it every other or every third World Cup, well, with a 48 team tournament, it's Egypt, but it's South Africa, Algeria, all these other countries that, they may get there if they have a run or they have a generation of a pool of players. Now they can be mainstays at the tournament. And
Yeah.
speaking of South Africa, so they have qualified, which is a very big deal. And what does it mean for the domestic game in South Africa? In the South African League, we were talking before we went to air about the Sundowners and how they qualified for the Club World Cup. What is South Africa making or qualifying for the World Cup? What does that do for the local market, the local league, and all of that?
So this is the part that maybe I need to bring to your attention. Lately I've been addicted to TikTok, and I tend to see what's going on there. And I was following um, South Africa and Nigeria. Nigeria is one of the best teams in the continent. They didn't qualify for the last World Cup, and they qualified this time. And Nigeria has got a lot of players that are outside of Nigeria. And what was interesting is listening to Nigerians commenting on the South African league now, saying that this is something that we've gotten right. We've strengthened our local league and the teams like that. I cannot tell you how we've managed to do it, but the focus on the local players and the focus on the local teams has done wonders. It's not something that I think started now. If you're to look at our own Champions League here in Africa, but I think you take about 4 players from each country, and you say four players from each team. Not 4 players. I meant to say 4 teams from each country, and you say they're going to play against other winners in other countries. We've had Orlando Pirates that has won that I think once, and they've ended up in the finals. In fact, they've won it twice. They've ended up in the finals, I think, another 2 times. Sundowns have won it, and they've ended up in the finals too. Kaizer Chiefs are consistently there. I think they were not there this year, but other teams as well that you see in Africa. So in South Africa. So what you see then is that there's that exposure that you get of our teams to other global teams or to other African teams. That's how we ended up also in the Club World Cup, because we've been doing very well in South Africa, but also in Africa in the Champions League. So those are the things that I would say are working out well. Now, we may look at that again and say, what else? Is it just the team that is looking at that? But having the coaches focusing on that same goal, that we are going to focus on getting the best teams that we can get out of South Africa. That is, I think, that is something that is good for our own football league. And at this point, as I said, quite a few people from Nigeria said that they wish that they could have done what we're doing instead of focusing on what the English Premier League or the European leagues are doing.
Lunga, so which other African teams impressed you through the campaign, and which runner-ups do you see as dangerous in the World Cup playoff window?
Sure. You've got your normal teams that somehow always get off the blocks quickly. You're talking about Morocco, Egypt. I mean, those are, I always say they're giants. I think Morocco ended up in the quarterfinals of the World Cup the last time, I think. So that's how good they are. But there's a team that has always been quiet until the last AFCON. That's called Cabo Verde. Oh, I mean, they came top of their group. Now, there's a reason why I'm saying that. It's because look at, this is a small island just off the coast, I think, of Senegal, and they've got a population of approximately 500,000 people. So it's not that big. They came on top of their group. I think they made it to the quarterfinals of the AFCON last year. They came on top of their group this year. They will be in the World Cup. I think it's their first time in the World Cup. You have to admire them. I've been looking at, I was following them during the AFCON. Everyone in South Africa was, by the way, because they just have this atmosphere. They enjoy their game. They know that they're there to enjoy themselves. As a result, somehow they tend to get the good result. And then you've got their fans as well that are just following them all around. I think that's a team that impressed me definitely, and I think that they need to be looked at quite closely. Around the playoffs, I was actually thinking that the 2 teams that have been regulars in the World Cup, Nigeria and Cameroon were going to make it. I was just disappointed that Cameroon failed to get past the semi-finals of the playoffs. Nigeria, I feel for them. They were. It feels as if they've been trying to get through a certain lump, and they're just struggling to get through it. There's some goals that they could have scored in the final against the DRC, but they just kept missing them, and the penalties were something else as well. So right now I've got the DRC, and I wish them all the best. There's a reason why they are going to the interconfederations, because they've done well here. And therefore, at this point, they have my support from the African side.
I mean, definitely want to always root for an underdog. We all love a good underdog story. So Cape Verde, we're definitely rooting for, and there's a big community here in Boston too. So it's really exciting to see the community really behind the team. So that's really exciting.
So let's pivot now for a minute, and we'll go outside the soccer realm for a moment. Talk to us about. I mean, after this is an immigration-related podcast, right? So, talk to us about 2 or 3 policy developments, in Africa, based on your expertise, that make intra-African movement a bit easier or more difficult, I guess, right now.
So I'll probably say to you, it's the e-visas. The e-visas have changed things. Now, there's some countries that are doing them well. There's some countries that are not doing them well. But the whole thing about e-visas and electronic travel authorization is something else. I think quite a few countries are moving towards the electronic travel authorization because it's kind of like instant. So, for example, if you're applying for an e-visa into South Africa, it's still going to take about 5 days for that to be finalized. Sometimes it can take a day. But the reason why that happens is because there's someone behind the scenes that is looking at these applications. Instead of using an algorithm and doing the security checks and the checks behind the scenes, just like the ETA is doing. But I go to Kenya, for example, when I was required to use an ETA there. I remember that there was a time when I forgot to complete the ETA, and I got to the airport, and so I was checking in. This lady says to me, "Hold on, where's your ETA?" I'm like, "Flip, I forgot." And she says, "Sit there and apply." So I sit there, I apply on my computer. 5 minutes later, I get a message that says, "Here's your ETA, you've been approved, you can travel to Kenya." Now, that is just something else. It just helps people travel into countries in a quick way. It's just focused on some AI behind the scenes. What is making, in fact, not only AI, but it's focusing on just the intelligence that is there about you in the system. The countries like your Cabo Verde, Kenya, Seychelles, South Africa is looking to implement it, but those other ones already have it. I think South Africa has been saying they're looking to implement it now, in fact, piloting this with the G20 visitors, I think, starting this week. So we'll look to roll it out probably before the end of December to certain countries. And then the other one is the visa-free travel. Now, you heard Rwanda, by the way, saying there's visa-free travel into Rwanda for Africans. So you've got something similar to that from the Gambia and also from Benin or Benin Republic. So these are changes that I think supposed to be looking at adopting them maybe regionally. When I'm saying regionally, if you're talk about ECOWAS has got something like that, where there's visa-free travel between the countries in the ECOWAS. But you need to look at something that can cover the whole continent like that. And lastly, this is quite interesting that between Botswana and Namibia, they allow their citizens to cross the border just using their identity cards. Now, they trust each other, they trust their people. So it's something that I believe that is a serious innovation. I do understand that you've got currently Zambia as well, thinking about it, Zambia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, and South Africa. And you need to understand that Lesotho is right next to South Africa, and people work in South Africa and go back to sleep as well at home. So therefore, it does not make sense to keep stamping a passport all the time there. So an identity document would just make sense there. But those are the 3 changes or policy implementations that I would say they are quite interesting that we need to think about. And
That last
we're going to benefit the
one,
community as well.
that last one's interesting because we used to have that same situation between the U.S. and Canada way back in the day, where you could just go in with your license and you could just drive over and drive back. Not so much anymore, but that used to be the case here.
What
Still
happened?
visa free though.
Still visa free. Still visa free. Right. For now. For now. We'll see.
What happened, Rick? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of this changed after September 11th.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yes, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, because I remember doing the same thing when I was a kid. I grew up in Los Angeles, and we would just drive over the border into Mexico for vacation. No one checked passports or anything. We'd drive back, barely any checks, but it all changed after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lunga, for clubs that are based outside of Africa that are touring the continent, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see that might create delays? And what does good look like? What can clubs do in advance to ensure that there are no delays, that everyone, all their players, their staff, their personnel are obtaining visas in time if necessary?
Sure, I would say the common mistake, I'll give you one, is that probably uh, clubs think that everything is going to be dropped for them, and they don't have the right documentation on time. Right? I think that's always a common mistake. However, I would say that players, staff, you've talked about the technical staff as well, they just need to arrange submission with the mission that will be accepting the application. The reason why you need to do that is because you need to do it ahead of time. You need to know at least that you're going to send one person for that and have that single point of contact that you're going to give all your documents to, and they're going to go and submit the applications for you. I think that would be the best one. As once you collect those documents and you agree on that single point of contact, then at least you know that you've provided them with the documents, and they, the diplomatic consular or the mission is actually always going to look forward to finalizing that, because you are representing your country in another country that you're going to. And there's been a talk as well that perhaps they should be given diplomatic passports because they are representing their country when they go to play football. So that's just one of the things that I would say are very serious that I would get to when it comes to players and supporting staff. As fans in general, they need to do things on time. Now we know that these are the countries that are going to Canada, Mexico, and the US. It does not only apply now on our side; it applies for everyone. I'm sure that one would need to think up quickly about applying for the right visas for those particular countries, and knowing as well that the missions will be or the consulates will be very busy at that time. So you need to look at the time and make it quicker, make your appointments as quickly as possible as well. You need to get your right insurance, you need to get your right vaccination certificates, and then when you submit your application, you need to have a full pack that is complete. At least that is going to save you time. And if you're a player, you're not going to be left behind by the bus. If you're a fan, you're not going to be watching it from TV like some of us.
Like all of us.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can get tickets. The tickets to this tournament in Toronto in particular are five figures, put it that way, for most
Sure.
for any good tickets. So Lunga, we thought we'd end off with a bit of a lightning round of some of these questions you sort of addressed, but I'll ask them anyway. So quickly, one African team that neutral fans will want to follow or circle or keep in mind for 2026.
Definitely Cabo Verde.
Okay. Okay.
Again, it's because they've just been this. We used to call them dark horses, but I think that this is like a unicorn, not a dark horse. It's a country that no one talks about much, and yet they've just been enjoying the game. Not follow them,
Top
not to win, but follow them to just enjoy them playing the game.
top their group convincingly to get to the World Cup. An African player who will break out on the global stage in this tournament.
I'll stick to a South African here, Bogazi. Bogazi he's been playing really well. I think he's got very good goals for South Africa. He unfortunately received a red card, I think, against Zimbabwe when we played against Zimbabwe because he was frustrated by something. He's a youngster, 20 years old, but I think that if he continues playing the way that he's playing, we may just lose him to one of the European clubs. But he's a boy to look out for.
Best stadium atmosphere on the continent.
I have to give it to the Nigerians.
Okay.
they go wild. They fill the stadiums. They fill the stadiums. In fact, I once saw this in I think it was in Ivory Coast as well, where the gentleman had a pot that looks as if it was boiling on his head and he was dancing. The stadium was full. So, but Nigeria, whenever they play, I feel like I should be there, and they enjoy their football and they celebrate their goals. Surely, I can tell you that every time when you score against them, then it feels as if the stadium has gone on mute, or maybe the microphones are
Shocked.
dead. but but, but still, the atmosphere that you see in the stadiums is just something else. It's electrifying.
And I'll ask you one more. One policy change you'd love to see to boost intra-African football travel so that more fans can travel along within the continent to watch their favorite club teams or national teams. That might make it easier.
Yeah, I would actually push it towards something that the governments in Africa have been trying to focus on, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, where they're saying that there should be visa-free travel amongst the African countries. If you are looking to move from one country to another for business purposes, for example, not to work, but for business purposes, then you must not be required to apply for a visa. I think if we're to have something like that, and with the ETA for all our countries, then at least you'll be able to track people and know that there's this person that is here. And these people, everyone is not going to feel as if they are precluded from traveling or they have to wait for a very long time before they actually get into the plane and travel. But yeah, it's just that.
And lastly, because we finish off every episode with the same question, this is a replica of what they will be playing for.
Can you
The
just hold it
final,
like this for me?
final. Well, it won't the screen, but this is what it's all about in East Rutherford, New Jersey, in July of 2026. So, Lunga, I'm going to ask you first who you'd like to win. I think we know the answer to that, but more importantly, who you think will win.
So, Rick, the problem with that is every team that I always choose to win, they get kicked out in the finals.
Finals
So
not bad. Finals not
no.
bad.
At that time is painful because a team that did not want to win ends up playing them in the finals. So I think there was a time when I watched Italy being knocked out, losing to, I think, to Germany. There was this one year, Brazil. At that
1994
time it had Roberto
in the
Baggio,
United
and they
States. In the
missed the
United
penalty. Yes,
States. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I bled at that point, and I said to myself, "Don't do it again." And the last time it was here in South Africa, and I was with the Netherlands team. I was like, "They're going to win," and I've been watching them in Spain in the stadium quite a few times, and right there, last minute,
That's right.
they lose, and my heart stopped. I hope that they'll make it this time to the World Cup, and I hope that they will be in that final and they will win it. Even though there's no Iron Robin, but I still hope that they'll get it there.
We've had guests say France, we've had guests say Argentina, we've had guests say Spain. You're the first guest to say the Netherlands, but I think it's as good a choice as any. They're always in the mix, and they're always lurking. So you never know.
Just so you know, if they make it there and end up in the final and they lose, I am going to blame you for that question.
We'll have you back on immediately.
Yeah,
we can discuss
we'll mark
down.
that one down. All right. Well, listen, Lunga, thanks very much for joining us. It's been a great episode. Thank you for taking the time for enlightening us and our viewers and listeners on all things Africa and what's going on in the continent at the club and national level. For all our viewers and listeners out there, hashtag Fragomen FC, stay part of the conversation, and we will see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.